hmm Hey, welcome into NiteMoodz, the third season. I am Michael, your Chief Mood Officer, and I'm in the lab, back from a vacation, and I did the last episode on the Atlantic Ocean. How exciting is that? But I'm here now in the captain's chair, and an interesting conversation we're going to have for you on this episode, dealing with hurts, traumas, and fears in love. I have an author, Dr. Marni, is going to be live with us shortly, but welcome in. Got to get all the Night Eagles from around this planet that we share. You're going to enjoy this conversation. If you have been through any type of trauma, any situations out of a relationship, whether it's with moms and dads or your spouse, you want to pay attention. You want to take some notes, because this episode is about freedom. It's about dealing with past hurts and having a conversation. Now, you can contact us at any time on this episode. Simply NiteMoodzHDQ@gmail.com or right off of this episode, and we will make sure that we get you the resources. So, one disclaimer, we're going to be talking about some sensitive subject matter that could possibly trigger you, but see, that's not our purpose to trigger. We're here to help you evolve and step out of the bondages of trauma, pain, and hurt, and step into freedom. And it begins with conversations with Dr. Marni Hill Foderaro. Welcome to the episode here on NiteMoodz, Dr. Marni. I'm going to call you Marni if that's okay, because I'm going to mess up your name.
No, of course. Thank you, Dr. Michael, for having me on NiteMoodz. I'm glad to be here.
This is going to be interesting because, like I said, we talked a little bit off camera before we went live, and I was in Florida for 4 days, just kind of to regroup, reset as we are in transition of a new season up here, and very fascinated with your history. Now, for those of you who are watching, because we're streaming, and for those of you who are listening, we have Dr. Marni's information in this show, but she is literally an award-winning, celebrated author. Okay, and she's come through some pain and the depths of pain, but the key word I want you to hear: she's come through it. And if she can come through it, I know you've heard this over and over again, you can come through it. Inspired by recent accounts, Marni's critically acclaimed 5-star reader favorites 2022 Hollywood Book Fest runner-up and 2020 Best Book Award winning spiritual fiction, God Came to My Garage. Now, I have to stop here because when I was reading, I'm like, I thought you were talking about someone else. I'm like, hey, this is pretty kind of cool. I'm like, wait a minute. She's actually talking about herself. She's actually gone through some things and had a massive encounter. I love the fact that you brought the encounter with God into your story and how that encounter began to change for you. So let's get into it. I know we're going to talk about the books. I have them right here. Had to put them out. I'm going to make sure that I honestly will grab my copies, because I believe in the work that you're doing. And like I said, there are so many women and men who have come through trauma, but it's like luggage. It's like that old beat up luggage that you're carrying around. And I believe what you're doing can liberate individuals who are in the middle of some crisis, some chaos. The situations and circumstances have them upside down. Welcome to the show, Dr. Marni. I know that was long, but I'm telling you, when I sat there on the beach, I was like, whoa, this is kind of interesting. I'm like, I told my wife, like, she's literally down there.
Yeah.
From Cocoa Beach. She's
I'm just a puddle jumper away from Florida. Yeah.
Yeah, you are. And I'm glad to have you on the show, in all honesty. Let's get into this. This is going to be really interesting, you guys. Night Eagles, you're in for a treat. Dr. Marni, a little bit of icebreaker. Kind of like to relax the whole setting here, just to kind of get us a feel of where we're at, because we are connected through a third party. So, but the connection is really kind of cool, you guys, because she's from Northern Illinois, from
Yeah. Yeah.
the Chicago land.
Yes,
And
I
so we're kind of connected. And Yana told me, she was like, hey, I think she went to NIU. She
yeah.
told me NIU. I'm like, that's right down the street.
Right.
That's right
That's
down the
where I
street.
got my doctorate at NIU in 1997. But I also was an adjunct graduate school professor at NIU for 12 years.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, we got 6 kids. My brother graduated from NIU. I think
Yeah.
Jeffrey graduated. He played baseball, by the way.
Mhm.
I came out 90, I think he would have came out 95, 96.
Mhm.
And then our fifth, fourth son, we have 6 kids, so I get them all confused.
Right.
Um, Alvin lives across the football stadium down there, so
Yeah.
he went to school down there as well. But who is Dr. Marni for all of our listeners? Give us some insight of who Dr. Marni is.
Well, sure. Yeah. And thank you so much again for having me on your show. As you said, I'm a Midwest girl, um, you know, by location, but also by heart, because,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of love in the Midwest. And I grew up actually in Lake Forest, Illinois.
Oh, wow.
I was a kid of a college professor. So, it was a very beautiful place to grow up. But at the same time, I was so eager to get out and
Mm-hmm.
see the world and make it on my own. And my ticket out was going to college at an early age, and actually started out in McMurray College in Jacksonville, Illinois, transferred to Illinois Wesleyan, and then when I went to Illinois State, it's where I found my passion in education. And after getting my degree, I went on to teach in Buffalo Grove and in the northwest
Okay.
suburbs. But I retired from teaching after a 35-year career
Mm,
as a special education high school teacher. But during that time, I got married and I had 2 beautiful children that
mm-hmm.
were in my life for 2 decades, which was amazing. And the reason why I say it that way is some of the traumas we're going to talk about. Um, I, unfortunately, like many wonderful dads and wonderful moms, have experienced parental alienation. And my experience actually happened with adult children, not young kids.
Okay.
So there weren't the whole custody battles and court chaos and nonsense. But abusers can find their way to kind of wreak havoc in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I chose to leave my 27-year marriage, um, the abuse really ramped up. And
Oh, wow.
in in trying to make sense of what I went through, I did go on to write a 5-book series called True Deceit, False Love. But before I did, I had to have a garage sale because I lost everything as far as material possessions. I lost my home, my assets, and my money was depleted. And,
Mm,
even my support system was gone. Friends, family, and neighbors that I thought were there just weren't. And I later learned about gaslighting and a smear campaign and a lot of things that, um, you know, are done by a perpetrator to kind of, you know, um, set a false narrative so that when you do need your support system, they're not really there for you. But
right.
my
Right.
support system was God. And I actually questioned whether God came to my garage sale. And that's why I wrote my spiritual fiction. And like you figured out, it's all based on true experiences, um, but just written in a format that I thought could reach the everyday person that may not pick up something, spiritual or religious
Right.
or a true account. I really wanted to reach a wider audience, but it was through that the miracles that I experienced there. I really felt God's love, felt I was supported, knew that I was making a very big decision that would have repercussions. Didn't quite know the seriousness of the repercussions, but I believe that we're here on earth to experience a journey and to learn lessons. And but definitely God was part of that. So I found my writing voice, and after retiring, I moved to the Caribbean, where I've lived for a little over 3 years, and I did during this time write a 5-book series called True Deceit, False Love. But so that's a little bit about me.
This is going to be very interesting because, I've come through abusive background as well, from parents. And for years, I would get triggered, even went through um, having other parts for myself. So that there would be an escape. And yet I played, I was an athlete in school and excelled in athletics, but those were the outs. And I was reading, and I remembered the dissociation identity disorder and a couple books that I have. And it was just really interesting because of the isolation where it came for you happened at an older age. And the mechanisms that I call the predators that they'll put into place, and it'll begin in the mind, so that you won't readily connect the dots because of crisis and trauma. And it's like spurring up tornadoes, and so everywhere you go there's dust ups, and so you're not really forming the understanding of, wait a minute, I'm actually the victim here, and I'm about to go through some drama. And everywhere, like you were saying, your outlets have been filtered for yourself, and you have never had the opportunity to have a genuine, I need help, a genuine, I need an ear so I can share, because they've already been filtered. The vines have already been set up in the doorway, so you can't even open up doors when you're coming through a violent encounter, whether it's verbally, whether it's physically, and it could be even sexually.
Oh yeah.
And I found that very fascinating, and I'm like, man, I remember those times. And thank God, the way how you wrote the book, with domestic violence so prevalent in the houses and in the beautiful edifices of houses, and then the appearance. So you would understand unless you had that real relationship and you could really open up. And so we're going to be talking about domestic violence, and it's prevalent in the church. So when you wrote the book, yeah, you can pick this book up, you guys, and realize that you could be living with a narcissist. Can you explain a little bit of what a narcissist is, and what that experience it was like for you? Keyword was like, because I want you guys to hear this. You're going to come through this.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And, there's many definitions of narcissism, and there's many different categories of narcissists. And, for the most part, they are undiagnosed because they don't believe anything is wrong with them. They're always
Mm-hmm.
pointing the finger. They don't do much self reflection. They believe they're even above the law, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And so many of these people, no matter what category of narcissism they fall into, they usually take on employment positions of top leadership, CEOs and presidents, and, just, or even if it's in a small business, they love to control and manipulate other people. So
Mm-hmm.
it plays out in their personal home lives, and it plays out in their work situations. And, one thing to mention is they have a public persona that they want the world to believe.
Mm-hmm.
And once you kind of figure out that your relationship is unhealthy, and you kind of question in the beginning whether it was abusive, And you're silenced. You're silenced because of the false narrative and the gaslighting. You are, even if you're an accomplished person, a
Mm-hmm.
man or woman who, really feels like they're in touch with themselves and others, and, you know, um, they can really question themselves, and they're told basically, are you going to believe your lying eyes or me? Are you going to believe your lying ears or me?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
you do kind of question reality. But getting back to your question about, what is a narcissist? A narcissist is a label, just to help us make sense of different personality types. Of course, the DSM manuals, outline very specifics that, what define, but you could have overt narcissists, people that are boisterous and, they come into the room and they want all eyes on them,
Yep.
and they're
Yep.
bragging about this and they're bragging about that, and they're just, in the same time putting down other people, even if it's done in a joke or even if it's done in the under the guise of kindness. They're really making a divide between themselves and others in a very overt, loud way.
Mm-hmm.
You might have someone at your workplace that is all about them, and they'll turn things around. They always want the attention, when they come in the room.
Yeah.
But then the more dangerous type, and the type that I've experienced, is a covert, malignant narcissist. And they're under the radar. They can be secret agent men or secret agent women that, have an agenda, have a malevolent intention to harm, but they do it in a way that is little by little. They slowly whittle away. That's why sometimes people don't leave these relationships until 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, sometimes even 50 years, uh,
Mm-hmm.
when they finally realize that, they're dealing with someone that does not have empathy, that may say the right things or do the right things at times, but it's like there's a cognitive dissonance where you know something is wrong, but you don't quite know what it is. You know that their behavior is unethical, but then you wonder if you're really seeing that. They say they have late nights at work that are
Right.
necessary for their job, yet really they're carrying on a double or triple life. And but you don't really know that at the time. And even if you do get those validations, you see an email, you see a text, you actually see them with someone else, someone comes forth and drops little hints about things. It's very easy to ignore. And I think, like you were saying, you were talking about the disassociation.
Mm-hmm.
I think that at some point we project our goodness onto other people, just like the narcissists project their evil agendas to other people. They are the ones that lie, cheat, and steal, and they will
Mm-hmm.
accuse you of doing that when really that's like nowhere near your personality or behavior. But we also, as loving empaths, also need to take responsibility that we project our goodness onto others. So just because we're honest and we're compassionate and forgiving, and we see the good in people and situations, we just assume the people we surround ourselves with also have those same values when really they may not.
Right. And I love the fact you mentioned this. We must take responsibility.
Oh,
Now, you're listening to this, and you're maybe under the age of 19. Now we know that responsibilities from such individuals are their responsibility, but when we have the realization, I believe is what you're sharing, when you have that realization, we don't like throw a rug over personality disorders because we hope if I just put more effort into this, I hope that they're going to change. If I make the bed a certain way, I hope that he's going to change. Or maybe when the person comes home, if I can just do this, because somewhere in there, I know he loves me. I know she loves me. I can turn it around. That responsibility of that certain behavior does more harm, because now you're self-victimizing yourself,
Right.
and you don't necessarily need the predator or the wolf, who is what she is talking about in wolves and sheep clothing.
Mhm.
You don't necessarily need their covert or overt interaction with you, because now you've set yourself up as a bullseye, and the target is now on you, and you've exposed yourself because of the compassion that you have. So we're not saying that that is wrong, but we're saying the responsibilities that we must possess and allow for ourselves, if it's just that little bit of freedom, that responsibility, and taking back that much control, will help open some doors and get you in the right step. I love how you said that.
Well, and also talking about responsibility at some point in our healing journey, and it can come at various points. For me, it kind of came later.
Hmm.
You have to look into your own intergenerational family trauma to see
Hmm.
what is your foundation. What did your parents, your interaction with your family of origin, how does that play out in your choice of relationships in your
Hmm.
adult life? And just like everything, it's not all black or all white, all good, all bad. There's a lot of intermittent reinforcement here, not only with your family of origin growing up, because even though there could be some very tough times or even abusive times, and sometimes it's the abuse that you see your parents do to one another.
Hmm.
There are also times that are positive that you remember, and it's kind of like as humans, we want to, hold on to the positive and try to remember those. And usually, when we take family photos, it's of the good times. And even in these relationships with spouses or partners that you later escape and you realize you have been through the ringer.
Hmm.
There's a lot of intermittent reinforcement in there because it's not all negative, but it's very, very calculated. They know, it seems, when you're getting close to the edge of not putting up with this stuff anymore, or questioning this, and so then they'll come back with love bombing you once again with
Right.
you know, um, a trip or a gift. But sometimes
Right.
it's just some attention. Sometimes, you're starved for attention from
Hmm.
the person that you live with and you don't get it. And then when you finally get a little bit of it, and lots of times that's behind closed doors only because they're carrying on another life outside of the home. And they might not want, their new supply or their harem closet to know that you're kind of going back to that primary source, of supply,
Hmm.
which is you, the person that made this commitment with them. So intermittent reinforcement is significant. But when we talk about responsibility, we have to actually go back and look at, why are we an overgiver? Why are we an extreme empath? Why do we put up with stuff that we shouldn't? And we have to learn about boundaries, and we have to
Yes.
learn, and that's a very hard lesson because for many years we didn't have boundaries. We allowed anything to happen
Hmm.
and we just tried to make the best of it.
Hmm.
And with all that future faking, you think, well, it will get better, or just if I only do this, then it'll get better.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
lots of times these abusers will expose themselves. It's not, once you figure out who they are and what they're about, and that you really are a victim. You do need to acknowledge that you are a victim. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't mean you stay in victimhood. You need
Right.
to climb out of that mode of thinking, because once you acknowledge that you have been a target, there are different ways to handle it. I mean, actually, I wouldn't have suffered such significant losses, which actually included losing my two adult children to parental alienation, if I would have just stayed status quo and just ignored and went along. And, I really believe that my abuser, his mask slipped on his own doing. And it was just, I happened to be at a stage after so many years and so much just behavior, unethical behavior, money manipulation, questioning things that I had. I happened to be at a stage where, something that could be considered not that significant was my light bulb moment. And and
Mm.
they expose themselves. You don't have to really do anything, and actually these are very dangerous people. I mean, they can go to extremes. I mean, you can
Yeah.
become a statistic,
Yes.
and many people do. We read about
Yes.
it in the news every week, and it's not a gender specific thing, but where, one spouse will take out the other either with their own hands, um, or by proxy,
Mm-hmm.
somehow causing the death of someone because they want to keep that false narrative going. And if that
Yes.
person is out of the picture, then they can tell whatever story they want. And they're good at storytelling, obviously, because when you escape and you realize, I mean, relationships that you've had a lifetime or years, they're not there, and
Right.
something had to have been told, and it's got to be some sort of outlandish lie, or more likely it's a very believable half truth. So it's got like a little bit of truth in it. Yeah, someone went to the hospital, but no, it wasn't because they were suicidal or mentally ill or out to harm the children. No, it was because they had a broken ankle, and
Mm-hmm.
they went to the hospital. So part of the story could be true.
Mm.
They put a spin on things that
Mm-hmm.
really cause other people to look at you differently and actually back away from the relationship, and not want to get involved. And in fact, that tells you a lot about some of the people you surrounded yourself with. If they don't have the insight, or concern to actually ask you about it, were you suicidal when you went to the hospital? No, I broke my ankle.
Right.
If they don't have the concern to even ask you about it and get clarification, to maybe see that there could be another side to what they've been told, then you really don't want these people in your life anyway. Because if they're going to believe the abuser, the manipulator, you
Mm-hmm.
know, um, it's how much energy do you really want to put into that? And some people put a lot of energy into that because they're still at a stage in their life where they need that external validation to make them feel whole. When somehow, and maybe it's because of some challenges of that I experienced growing up, I kind of rely on myself and my internal validation. And yeah, if my circle goes from being big to very small of who I can trust and who I want in my life and who I let in my life or who I keep in my life, then so be it. I'd rather live with authenticity and truth than a false narrative with,
Right.
craziness.
Take a deep breath.
Yeah.
We're halfway there. I was thinking about master manipulators when you're talking about that, the internal and the external manipulation, and even they'll go to the, this should be your friend. They'll go to the ends because they'll do it. They're doing it at all costs. You become expendable in the game of life because of what they have created, this false narrative of of identity.
Yeah.
And so it's that Jekyll and Mr. Hyde type effect, where
Definitely.
you are married and you see one individual, and you may have the dragon individual at home, and in public, he is polar opposite.
Hmm.
And in the quiet, you're going to get those different nuances that you're not readily availing yourself to because you are love starved, emotional starved, and that isolation, whether it's internal isolation or it's manipulative isolation, where they go to the nth degree to tell you who your friends are, where you can go, how much
Oh
money
yeah.
you can spend, where you can shop, how many miles are on your card. So it's this calculated effort at all costs, and you're the expendable one. That is a dangerous individual. And as I was thinking about, listen to what you're saying, so I want to talk about God came to my garage sale and that breakthrough.
Hmm.
Did you become sick and tired, tired and sick, or was God in the middle of this just laying pieces of little nuggets for you to pick up and make sure that they get you to your light bulb moment, and then the gates are open? How did this moment happen and impact you?
I think that it's a combination, honestly. But I do believe that we are supported and loved by God and the divine. It's almost like if we were to experience everything at one time, like major light bulb moment, I don't know that we could cope. It might be too much to handle. So it's almost like you are shown little by little, a scenario, a situation, so that it's like a puzzle. You're putting the pieces of the puzzle together, and at some point, you have enough to know the picture of
Mm-hmm.
what it is.
Mm-hmm. The picture is already
So
created, and it just took
yeah,
your eyes and ears to open up to look at exactly what you were looking at. And like what you're saying,
right.
what you're looking at is what you're looking at.
Right, right. And you have to be at a point in your experience, in your learning, in your journey to be ready for the real news that
Yeah,
you've been living in a false reality
yeah.
and that things aren't what you really think they are. And you have to make some choices. Like I said, I didn't plan my escape. Boy, I wish I would have. I think I would have
Mm,
maybe not have had to endure such significant losses if I had
mm-hmm,
planned my escape. And I
mm-hmm,
also am very guilty of turning over things over the years to my ex-husband to manage, especially finances. A lot of these abusers are just obsessed with money, but it's not only the money, it's the control. Like they want to know where you go. They don't let you
yes,
have a checking account because you're not
yes,
smart enough to handle it. They they want to know your schedule completely. Part of it is because they're trying to coordinate their various schedules of deceit
yes,
so that
yes.
things don't overlap. And sometimes they do overlap. And I had a few overlaps, and even then, with the overlaps of some people actually coming to our house just as I was leaving, you know I just wanted to think the best. It was really confusing and I questioned it, but I was really already programmed to let things slide. And I was so involved in my children's lives, and so much of it had to do with me being involved with whatever they were doing because that was my priority in so many
Mm-hmm,
ways. But yeah, it's you could kick yourself afterwards when you think, "Oh my gosh, I could have avoided, a decade of the trauma." But that's maybe not how God wants us to learn and live. That we
mm-hmm,
need to go through these very dark times. We need to have the truth little by little revealed to us so that we can actually handle it and then maybe be at a point of strength where we could make a decision that is really in our best interest so that we can go on to look at the situation for what it was, compartmentalize it in a way that we can move forward in our life and we can find love again and we can find hope and we can actually get back to knowing who we are as people, because we lose our
Yeah.
identities through this.
I was just gonna say that you just said what I was getting ready to come out of my mouth. That's that's the trade. And so now it's regaining your identity back, and
Yeah.
you can get your identity back. It's just you just take it back.
Yeah.
It's just really that simple.
Right.
The garage sale.
Yeah.
Let's talk about God came to my garage sale. Okay, I thought this was fascinating. I literally had a light bulb moment. I'm like, wait a minute. This is her garage sale. This is her life. How long were you in this situation, this circumstance, the crisis? How long did that go on for you?
The crisis is still going on in
Mm,
many ways. I'm just choosing to, like I said, compartmentalize and live life. I filed for divorce in 2013. And shortly after, the divorce was granted. 15 lawyers later, even on my part, I am still back in court with my abuser.
mm,
So they just obsess over you. They want to keep you engaged and control you. And when they realize that you have moved on and you're happy, and
mhm,
they've taken everything away from you, even your children, yet you can still put a smile on your face and find goodness in humanity and love in your life. They will just keep on trying to engage to just, even if it's with false documents, false allegations, or
yeah,
whatever, they know the system, and they
yeah,
they they resort to just kind of legal control of you. And you know of course, you always have to be vigilant because these predators are very dangerous. You
mhm,
do have to look out, and they go to great lengths to find out where you live, even if
mhm,
it's not listed anywhere.
mhm,
Somehow they've got connections, and
mhm,
they will go to extremes to work their calculations, and they're figuring out. They must. I couldn't even imagine being these people, because they spend so much time just tracking and trolling,
mhm,
and you know uh, I mean, what kind of life is that? I don't know. But so the chaos has continues.
mm,
The
okay,
children are still being manipulated. They haven't been in my life for, well, one of them for close to a decade. And
okay,
you would think 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds would know better, but I'll tell you, they can be manipulated just like you were manipulated. And
yeah,
there's a lot of research on parental alienation, which, really is child abuse.
yeah,
No matter what age the kids are, but it's really an offshoot of intimate partner violence, because really, in their need to destroy you by any means, and that's using the children, they are really harming their children for life, and they don't care about that. Their
right,
goal of destroying you outweighs any kind of hope that they would have that their children could go on to live a happy, independent, balanced life. I mean, what parent teaches their children to hate the other parent? I mean, even with everything that I have been through, I still believe that children need the love of both parents. And,
of course,
right. It's just, but that's not the case when there's alienation. And then research for me, so moving on from the God Came to My Garage Sale book to my 5-book series, True Deceit, False Love,
mhm,
that all came about because I was trying to research what in the heck did I go through? What is domestic violence? What is parental alienation? What is word salad and gray rocking, and I mean, so in my quest to kind of learn what I was going through, um, that knowledge really helped me understand what I experienced, and led me more towards accepting that, you know, there's a real dynamic at play here, and it is researched, and a lot of these abusers kind of use the same playbook. It
Hmm.
seems like I could say my situation and it could be just like everyone else's situation. There's so many, common components, but in my research I would write down these terms and be like, okay, I got to look that one up. I got to look that one up. I'd
Hmm.
listen to podcasts where we'd have, candid conversations like we're having today. I would look into the research. I'd look into books, that would explain these things. And, before I knew it, I had 100 terms to look up, and that list grew to 1,000. And then after it got to over 10,000, I thought, okay, if this, I'm a reasonably intelligent person. If this is helping me put the pieces of the puzzle together, then maybe it'll help someone else. So my first book in the 5 book series is 15,555 terms and phrases on domestic violence, narcissistic abuse, parental alienation, and then after doing the inner work that you must do to own up, to take responsibility, to learn what you need to do to make some changes, you know,
Hmm.
in how you interact with others, you've got to look into that intergenerational family trauma component. So that first book, then, and I didn't even set out to write this series. I always had the term in my mind, true deceit, false love, because what we really want in life, the empathetic people, that is, we want true love. But
Right.
what we got was true deceit, and the love was false. And so that first book, I found so healing. And um, there were mentors in my life that
Ah.
I would look into. And because they had wisdom and they had experience and knowledge, and many of them had research behind them. So I, got the kind of tangible evidence I needed to, that I could trust.
Right.
And those mentors, and I could rattle them all off, there are many of them, they turned around and endorsed my 5 book series because they said, Marni, what you're doing is very different. We've never seen anything like it before with your poetry and your
Hmm.
survivor workbook and your word search puzzle book and also your reference book of all these terms. We haven't seen anything like it. And it's a nice, alternative or an additional kind of resource for people that are trying to make sense of this. And so they turned around and endorsed my work, which was just so validating. And
Yes.
even though I don't need that external validation, it sure was nice to know that these people that actually were my mentors and guided me, even if it was virtually, I was able to connect personally with, and they turned around and supported me.
Yes, because they're affirming the process. And when you have individuals in your life, when life has been removed and a facade of life has been placed in your environment, when you have people who can affirm that that crap or that mess or that journey was real, they what they're doing is they're adding value
Yeah,
by affirming, and it's helping to bring forth healing at the same time. And
definitely.
see, these are the spiritual encounters that he does it so sneaky. And we may say, well, God, where are you at? Why is this happening to me? Why
Yeah.
are my children being taken away? Why? But in those soft, subtle moments, as few and far they may feel or seem, he will place, I call them gold keys in my life, in the
Yeah.
pathway. And they are there, as you're talking about, um, in the poetry collection. They are there to open doors to freedom.
Definitely. Mhm.
And when the doors open, you run. You run like you're running through a field.
Right. And the healing really can jumpstart.
Yes. Yes, because you can breathe, you can experience you for the first time and all of the emotions. And I say this to a lot of my clients. I want you to experience all the emotions as freedom comes because that quickens healing. And
Right.
some of those emotional experiences will suck. But see, when freedom comes, when you're breathing oxygen, when you're oxygen deprived, it burns the lungs. And many folks don't understand that. It burns the lungs. And so the burning is burning off of the impurities inside of the lungs. And so when you're being liberated and healing comes, you have to burn through the hurt and pain.
Mhm.
And it won't last forever. It won't last forever because it's going to come through you, come upon you. You're going to open up your eyes, your natural senses, your spiritual senses. You're going to realize the spiritual encounters coming through it. And you'll eventually find, as Dr. Marni's here talking about this, write, experience the journey in writing and
Mhm.
doing some of the research because the research is helping to recenter you as an individual, a free individual. And so I found that fascinating. This book, the 5-book series, and this free verse, the poetry collection. What got you on that for us? What little time we have? What caused you to write in this? I call it the yellow book. It's the poetry
Yeah,
book.
the yellow book. Yeah. Well, the yellow book actually started with the green book, and the green book was acrostic poetry. And I've
Mm,
acrostic poetry my whole life, where you take a word and write it vertically and you add, a sentence or two or a statement to it. And, so the green book was a natural progression from the blue book, which is the resource book of all those terms and phrases, because I picked different terms and phrases that were pretty general that a lot of people are experiencing. And with that poetry, I didn't make it gender specific. It wasn't my tell all. Of course, my experiences are woven into everything um,
mm-hmm,
naturally, but I wrote it from a dad's point of view, a mom's point of view, an abuser, a victim, that type of thing. So the poetry really started out with that. Um, but I was really actually I love where I live in the Caribbean. There's this amazing arts museum that offers just wonderful courses for people and experiences. And I've tried painting and clay and all sorts of things. Realize that I'm not a painter and I'm not really good
mm-hmm,
at clay, but I certainly
mm-hmm,
had fun. But one of the classes I took was from a visiting poet. And so, with this 3-day workshop, I actually ended up writing the first poem that was free verse, I think, that I've ever written in my life. And that one was called Vanished Voice. And I had just realized that my best friend from a lifetime, someone that I even felt more connected to than my spouse, betrayed me, lied to me,
mm,
was involved in some very unethical behaviors.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
know boy, that was a really hard one for me. And the timing of that poetry class was around that same time. And we basically had to pick for 3 days, we worked on one poem. And that is where Vanished Voice came in. And it was about basically being aware and losing a relationship with someone that you thought was a lifetime best friend. Very, very painful. But the writing helped me go through my thoughts. The whole process of writing was just so very healing. And
mm-hmm,
after doing that poem, I really kind of put that aside because, I also am busy living life in the Caribbean.
right,
I'm snorkeling in the ocean, hiking the rainforest, and I still travel and see the world. And, so I had a lot of other interests and things to do. But there came a time where I thought, boy, the acrostic poetry book, the green book, and the red book, which is the survivor's workbook, has really been so well received. Why don't I just think about other situations that I would want to write about? And I found it very healing. And actually, in that regard too, I went into the depths of my soul, into my childhood wounds and traumas,
Hmm.
and then connecting the dots to current situations and how some of these relationship dynamics are playing out. They're not as healthy as I thought they were.
Mm.
That was tough, because some of these are with family members that,
Yeah.
you're supposed to love your family unconditionally. Well, I do love my family unconditionally. However, I have made some choices in my life that I'm done with the gaslighting. I'm done with the put
Yeah.
downs. I'm done with the antagonistic chaos. I see some things for what they really are when you start to realize that, you think someone is supporting you and that it's an equal give and take in a relationship. It's not always the case. And so the writing is just so very healing. And that's how that yellow book, the free verse poetry book, came to be. And again, just like with all my books, I think people and situations may seem similar, or they may seem to be for a particular person, but it's really not. I really kind of took all my research and what I've heard other people go through and what I
Hmm.
experienced, and I just use this creative process in the poetry. So, again, this isn't an autobiography. It isn't a tell all. That's not who I am. That's not who
Right.
I ever will be. That's not my role or my interest to point fingers at other people. But I can slowly retreat from things that I realize are toxic or unhealthy. And then I can find my freedom, in writing, because not only is it healing for me, it's helpful for other people, and they can see themselves in that writing. I think that's kind of what poetry is all about.
Oh, yes. It's the journey of walking with someone and not experiencing that in real time.
Hmm.
And you can just take that walk and take that journey through. I call it the ebb and flow of life. And so the poetry is definitely that. Um, and it's highly effective. And you're right, there may be some creative m- projects that you may not connect with, but see, when you just make the effort, what you may not understand if you're listening still with us, because I think it's kind of cool conversation. What you may not understand is this: you're unlocking what has been hindered and what has been covered. And so there's just like your frontal cortex. Maybe logic has been brainwashed or it's been misaligned because of the systematic verbal minutia of abuse. That's one
Yeah.
way I can, you call it the toss salad. It's the playing that over, and when you play that tape becomes a reality. And so getting that experience off and onto paper, off onto some type of board to paint or color or calligraphy, whatever it is that you try and say, I'm no good at this. No, you were good because you made the attempt.
Right. And I got it out of me. I got
Yes.
it out of me. And,
Yes.
people can find different ways to do that. They might experience working on cars and fixing something,
Mm-hmm.
and they can come away with that same result. They don't have
Mm-hmm.
to write a poem. They could work on a
Right.
car. They might go to the gym and exercise and reach a kind of goal that they have for themselves. That could give that same result. I mean, we all have to find our passions and what works for us.
Mm-hmm.
And I found writing to be that passion. However, I have lots of other ways to explore releasing trauma. And I
Yes.
believe, one thing that I do on a regular basis is wake up with an affirmation in my mind and with a state of gratitude and knowing how blessed I am. Sure, I've been through challenges, but we've all been through challenges. Mine might look
Mm-hmm.
different than yours, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
how we choose to respond to these challenges is what will determine our destiny and our happiness. So I wake up with just a feeling of gratitude, and I could have done that in the Chicago suburbs, but I'm thrilled to do it, in the Caribbean, where I wake up and the first thing I see is the beautiful ocean in front of me. And that
And
really is helpful to me. But you don't need to necessarily change where you live. And so many people don't have that opportunity or
right.
means to do that. You can just find a photograph that resonates with you, and it doesn't, it could be anything, that's something
Mm-hmm.
that brings you joy, and you can actually look at that. Um, go to the dollar store, spend $1. Well, now it's $1.25, I guess. But you go to the dollar store and get a frame and put some words that you could look at first thing in the morning, or put a picture that
Mm-hmm.
will remind you, hey, I'm going to take a few moments here and reflect and, pray and, ask the universe to take care of me and take care of my path and my journey, and all those, that have been in your life or that may come into your life. I even pray and wish well for my abuser or negative people, people that actually set out to harm people, that are really intentional, in their malevolence, knowing that they are wounded from their own childhood. And, we are all
Mm-hmm.
children and people of God. And something must have happened to make
Mm-hmm.
play this out in such a negative way. Now, it doesn't mean I, open them back into my life, but I can,
Right.
from a distance, from my soul level, wish everyone well and on their journey, and just hope that we can all come to, a better understanding of goodness and love and light. And you know we're all at different places in our journey. I feel like I'm much more evolved than an abuser, because they're not at the point of being able to even look outside of themselves,
Right. Right.
let alone
Totally.
look at the harm that they're causing, even when it comes to their own children, their own beautiful children. But eventually truth prevails, I believe, and
It
I hope
does.
it's in this lifetime that there will be reconnection and reconciliation. But that is not up for me to control. I can only do the best that I can by putting love and light out there, by writing my books, by you know speaking the truth, and with a lens of love, and with my knowing that you know God is supporting me.
Totally. 100%. Self-reflection is powerful for all of you. And you've been listening to a conversation with myself and Dr. Marni Hill Foderaro. And, I'm thinking of in the future, we're just touching the surface. So I want you guys to not just support what Dr. Marni is doing, but when you get your hands on the 5 series of books, plus God Came to My Garage, I believe it will open up some doors, some pathways, challenge you in your thinking, and you'll experience a little more peace stepping into your freedom. Dr. Murray, a little more time here. How can they get a hold of you so that they can get these resources? I just feel it that this is helpful. This is palpable to help all the people.
Well, thank you so much. My books can be found on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and then my
Mm-hmm.
publisher is Balboa Press, which is a division of Hay House. And, maybe there's some in your audience that know Hay House books are all about spirituality and self-help and, just some action steps, a lot of great resources out there. But I'm not on social media because I've focused on writing, and I've got so many amazing literary endeavors in the near future coming up. So I'm not on social media, but I do have a website that I keep up to date. And that is www.godcametomygarage.sale.com.
There it is. And I want to say on many of our conversations, now this is a very sensitive topic matter. Help is available for you. Domestic hotline, I want to give you this number, 1-800-799-7233. Once again, the number, if you're in a domestic situation and it's spiraling out of control, whatever that is for you, know that there are some resources at hand. 1-800-799-7233. Dr. Marni, this has been kind of cool.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on your podcast, and just for what you do. You bring so much information and light and love, but also resources and
Yeah.
really important information through these candid conversations. So, it's just been an honor for me. So, thank you so much for the opportunity.
We're going to have you back on. Night Eagles, this has been a wrap for our one-on-one conversation Thursdays with myself and Dr. Marni Hill Foderaro. Hope you enjoy this. Now, if you want to get more impact, you can inbox and we will get you in contact with Dr. Marni. It's been a pleasure. I'm going to see you back here for the next conversation in the lab. Thank you for listening. Have a good night. Have a good day, and be a blessing to yourself as you bless others. Take care.